Hello, I'm Chad Boyd, Rangeland Scientist at the Eastern Oregon Agricultural Research Center. Recently, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service decided not to add the greater sage-grouse to the endangered species list. Many breathed a collective sigh of relief with this announcement. However, the sage-grouse issue is still with us and is likely to remain a hot topic for some time to come. Range-wide, sage-grouse populations have declined in recent history, and new habitat management challenges such as invasive weeds, oil and gas developments, transportation and power corridors, and urban growth have emerged. Managers, scientists, and planning groups are working to identify impacts of these new factors on sage-grouse and their habitat and how best to mitigate these influences. The bottom line here may be that the decision not to list sage-grouse represents a window of opportunity for land management planners to develop and implement balanced strategies for managing sage-grouse and their habitat in ways that minimize the chances of a future listing. Yesterday we discussed the current status of the sage-grouse issue. Today I'd like to look into efforts at sage-grouse planning going on at the state level. Planning for sage-grouse management is somewhat unique in that most of the planning efforts have and are taking place at the state level. This stems from a memorandum of understanding developed through the Western Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies and signed by federal natural resource and regulatory agencies. This and subsequent memorandums direct management planning to take place at the state level, and the 11 western states with sage-grouse populations have approached this challenge in various ways. Some states have multiple planning groups, whereas Oregon has only one planning team. The Oregon team is made up of representation from a diverse array of interests, including state and federal management agencies, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, private landowners and university interest, and federal resource advisory councils. In Oregon, most sage-grouse habitat is on federal land managed by the Bureau of Land Management, and adherence to the plan will be completely voluntary for private landholders. For the past couple of days, we've been discussing the sage-grouse issue and management planning efforts at the state level. One of the emerging thoughts to come out of the planning process is that the sage-grouse issue is about more than just sage-grouse. Put another way, this is not a single species issue, because there are a number of other sagebrush obligate species, many of which are declining, that have the potential to take political front and center over time. This has raised some level of concern because we may or may not have the time, money, and people resources to repeat the intensive planning process currently underway for sage-grouse for each and every sagebrush obligate wildlife species. One alternative is to take focus away from the needs of individual wildlife species and concentrate on producing healthy sagebrush plant communities across the landscape. This approach would produce quality habitat for a variety of species and has the added advantage of decreasing the number of species recovery plans operating on a given piece of real estate, a problem that could become crippling for management efforts over time. For the next couple of days, I'd like to take a look at the ecology of tufted hairgrass, which goes by the scientific name Dischampsia cespitosa. The various subspecies of this bunchgrass have near circumpolar distribution at northern latitudes. In parts of Europe, hairgrass is thought of as a weed, but in North America it is considered a valuable forage species for both livestock and wildlife. Additionally, its tolerance for soils high in lead, zinc, copper, and manganese has made it a useful species in mine reclamation projects. In eastern Oregon, tufted hairgrass occurs mainly in mid to high elevation, moist to wet meadow environments, where it is often the dominant native grass under non-cultivated conditions. Hairgrass may also occur in streamside plant communities and is often considered a riparian species. However, its water tolerance is generally less than that of obligate wetland species such as sedges, and it is usually of secondary importance under conditions of prolonged water saturation. Yesterday we discussed the ecology of tufted hairgrass. Today I'd like to look at the management of this species and its response to grazing. Non-published observations and field reports suggest that moderate levels of use by livestock prior to seed set allow for stand maintenance over time. Tufted hairgrass decreases with heavy livestock use, and these impacts can be amplified with lower water tables associated with drought conditions or degraded channels in riparian systems. Under these conditions, more drought-tolerant species such as Kentucky bluegrass may increase. Surprisingly little experimental work has been published on grazing impacts on this species, and most that has been published is in the form of clipping studies. The limited experimental information largely agrees with the idea of tolerance for moderate levels of defoliation early in the growing season. Experimental work also suggests that nitrogen fertilization, combined with waterlogged soils for periods of 6 weeks or less, can increase protein content of the forage, an effect that disappears with soils waterlogged for long time intervals. I'm Chad Boyd, and thanks for listening.